Hello, welcome back to my channel and to today's video, which is probably the last one about the house. If you can see any stuff going on in the background, bit of a mess at the moment, a week today I go on my travels, so I'm starting to get everything ready for that, so ignore that. But yes, I wanted to make a video about what I spent on renovating my house. And that is simply to document it and hopefully give people who were in a similar position to what I was an idea of what things can cost, because as a first time buyer I did not have much of a clue about the true cost of renovations, especially now that we've had inflation and the cost of living crisis and materials have gone up. I'm really lucky, I will say right now, that labour costs were minimal for me because as you may well have seen if you watched the renovation vlogs, me and my dad did the lion's share of the work, so it was more paying for materials than for tradesmen, although there are specific high costs associated with tradesmen that I had to use for jobs that we couldn't do ourselves. So a quick update on the house is that the tenants have moved in now and they seem really happy there. They are getting a pet. They haven't decided whether to get a cat or a dog or not, so that's exciting for them, and I hope that they enjoy making it their home. They seem like a really lovely couple, so really pleased about that. But yes, with regard to the house, I did have a budget, and another important thing to consider in all of this is that going into the purchase of the house, I was already aware that there would be works to damp proof the property that I would have to pay for. It was flagged on the initial survey when I first had my offer accepted, and I chose to go and get a professional damp and timber inspection done by a local damp proofing company that were highly recommended. They're sort of the only company in the area, to be fair. They've got the monopoly on the market around here, but they are really good at what they do and they know what they're talking about. They don't rip you off, and their prices are actually reasonable. So I paid, I think it was £200 for the damp and timber survey, and I've not included that in this video because that I associate with the cost of buying the house. So effectively, they'd already given me a quote of how much it was going to cost to do the works. And I had budgeted for that quote and then worked out roughly what I was going to spend on other stuff, and I came up with a budget of £4,000 with a contingency of £1,000 to give me a £5,000 sort of max budget. And surprise, surprise, or spoiler alert, for those of you who don't know, there are a couple of surprises along the way, and we'll get on to that. So with what they quoted me for the damp works, that was going to be around £1,800. However, that included doing works to the kitchen, and it would have been really minimal works, working around the kitchen units that are there. And after further discussions with them and sort of explaining my plans for the property, it was decided that that was kind of pointless because it wasn't going to tackle the damp in the kitchen. It would only tackle those very small areas. If you've seen the renovation vlogs or the house tour, you will have seen that there really isn't much blank wall space in the kitchen. The vast majority is behind cabinets. And so we left that because I said at some point in the future, you know, sort of 5-year goal would be to put a new kitchen in it, and at that point when I was ripping out the current kitchen I would get the damp works done then so that it actually worked and the kitchen will be damp free. It seemed pointless spending extra money on damp proofing it when I could only do a very small portion of it and it was quite expensive. So yeah, I budgeted £2,000 for that, and I've got my Excel spreadsheet here. The total cost in the end was £1,365.20, and that included an extra, I think, roughly £100 to get the work insured for 25 years. So if any of the areas that they damp proofed show signs of damp again, I can claim on that insurance and they will come out and repair the work and claim their fees for that back through the insurance company that is backed by. I thought that was worthwhile having. So yeah, that was £635 cheaper than I expected, so an instant saving, which was fantastic. The next big cost was then for a plasterer to go in after the damp proofers and replaster the areas that they had damp proofed. They could have replastered it themselves, but they were actually very honest and basically said that their cost for replastering would most likely be higher than a plasterer. And in fact, my sister's partner, his dad is a plasterer, so he did me a slightly better price than someone I don't know would do. And I budgeted £500 for the plastering and it cost me £450. So it was £50 under on that. Again, was really happy. Now going back to the damp, the inspection I had was damp and timber because the floor in the house was bowed, so it was suspected that the joists would need replacing, and that there may be some rotten ones because of the damp, and that might be why they were twisting. It was really difficult for them to survey it because, as you may already know, the previous owner was a cowboy and threw any kind of building waste under the floorboards, so when they went to inspect under there they just couldn't see that much because all this waste was in their way. Anyway, this was a pleasant surprise. We lifted the original Victorian floorboards to find that there was only one joist that was rotten. What we believe's happened is that over the years, because it's in a mining area, when they filled the mines in because they're no longer active, there was a bit of resettlement and the little sleeper walls that the joist is sat on had moved slightly, and that had caused the joist to bow. There's only one joist that needed replacing, and that was because at some point the mains water connection to the house had been leaking and caused it to rot. And they'd repaired the leak, but they'd not replaced the joist because, again, cowboy. So I budgeted £300 in terms of timber for the joists, and in fact we only ended up spending £61.94, so that would be for the replacement joist and also all the screws that we used to put the floorboards back down. Unfortunately, the floorboards weren't really salvageable for many reasons that you can see in the renovation vlogs. Paint, so with the joist, that was a massive saving. It was 238 quid cheaper than I expected. With paint, I'd budgeted £200, which in hindsight probably wasn't that much given that I had the entire house to paint. And I went slightly over budget in that category and ended up spending £219.51. That's not including things like masking tape and paintbrushes, because that falls into my miscellaneous budget. Lighting, I wanted to replace every single light fitting in the house because they either yellowed, caked in emulsion or cracked. And so in terms of lighting, I'd budgeted £150 and I only ended up spending £93.35. So that was for a water resistant bathroom fitting, 2 spotlight bar fittings for the kitchen, and then just the usual ceiling pendants for the other rooms. So that was 56 quid cheaper than anticipated. Sockets and switches, a similar thing. All the sockets and switches were old and battered. There was a mixture of white, brass and chrome switches throughout the house, which were completely trashed. They either had paint on them, were scratched, had the switches broken, whatever. So I budgeted £150 to change those, and I only ended up spending £80.04. So that was almost a £70 saving on that. And you'll see a theme here that in the majority of categories, I was saving money. I was doing really well with my budget. We'll wait for the sucker punch at the end, which you probably already know about if you've seen the vlogs. The fence. When I bought the property, the fence on the boundary that I'm responsible for between me and my neighbour to the left, there was no fence there anymore. It had completely gone, and the previous owner didn't think to replace it. And there was also no fence across the back either. And I had budgeted £300 for that, and I did get quotes for someone else to put it up for me. This is a great example of how we saved money through doing it ourselves. So I was quoted £550 to put up the new fence, so that was labour and materials. Fair enough, you know, it is what it is. But we ended up doing it ourselves, or more, my dad did it, and we spent £236 on materials. and the labour was free, so I saved £64 there. Then there was a laminate flooring. I decided to run laminate flooring through the whole of the downstairs of the house, bar the kitchen, because I kept the floor, it's like vinyl in there, kept that, didn't change it. And I had budgeted £500 for the laminate flooring, and that only ended up costing me, including the underlay, £353.34, because B&Q had a 4 for the price of 3 offer on their packs of laminate flooring. I'd really recommend their flooring. It is nice to work with, it locks together easily, and it so far, touch wood, obviously it's not stood the test of time yet, it does seem like good quality. The reviews are good, so hopefully. Then we have two categories that I didn't even use, because initially I budgeted to replace the kitchen flooring and the bathroom flooring. Like I said, vinyl, it was vinyl in both rooms. And when I thought I was going to live in the property myself, I wasn't a huge fan of the style of the flooring in both rooms. Not even necessarily hugely dated, just not my taste. Perfectly serviceable and in decent condition, and I'd budgeted £150 a room for that, and like I say, didn't end up replacing it, just cleaned it up, cleaned it really nicely, so that is £300 saving there, so brilliant. With the upstairs carpet, so I recarpeted the stairs, landing and 2 bedrooms, and my friend's mum very kindly gifted me a load of carpet because she moved into a new house and didn't like the carpets. They were a sort of mid-brown colour, and they were fantastic quality, really luxurious thick pile, and they were only between 3 and 5 years old, but they just weren't to her taste. The colour, she said it was too dark, which I understand. So anyway, she had that ripped up and gave it to me for free along with the underlay. And so I'd only budgeted £200 for the carpet, because then after she gave me that, her nephew gave, or niece and niece's husband gave me another huge piece of carpet from their house that they had taken out, and I was certain I had enough to do the whole of upstairs with, and boy was I wrong. So I'd budgeted £200 for that. Obviously the carpet was free, so I budgeted £200 for the carpet fitter. The carpet fitter came out and there was only enough to actually carpet 1 bedroom because of the shape of the pieces of carpet, where they'd been cut round different things. They just weren't big enough to use, even though it looked like there was loads there. It just wasn't the right shape for the rooms I was putting it in. So that was a little bit of an awkward one, and I ended up spending £560. So £260 of that was I went to a carpet shop and paid for the carpet and the fitting of said carpet to the main bedroom, and then the carpet fitter, that was £260 for him to fit the carpet to bedroom 2 and supply and fit carpet for the stairs and landing. And he did me a really good deal on that actually, because the stairs and hall carpet was an 80% wool blend carpet, top-notch quality, would be between £40 and £50 a square metre, and he did me the whole carpet for £100, and it was £160 for his labour. It was just one that he'd had in storage and wanted rid of, and that's why he did it at such a good price. So as much as I went £360 over budget in that category, that was still a lot cheaper than it could have been. To say that I carpeted, 3/4 rooms, but if you class the stairs as a room, for that. Then miscellaneous, I budgeted £100 for that, and that was things like paintbrushes and masking tape and just odds and ends, and that only came to £56.11, so I was £43.89 up on that, which is brilliant. Then with the bathroom, I budgeted for, because at this point in time I thought I was going to be replacing the bathroom, and the way it worked out, the time and cost associated with moving the plumbing around to how I wanted it would have been way more than it was worth, way more hassle than it was worth, particularly because the soil pipe for the toilet runs behind all the other units, behind the sink and the bath, and so to change that I would have had to completely rip out the soil pipe and redirect it. So in the end, I decided to just replaced the toilet and sink like for like, and put new bath panels on and replaced the radiator because it was rusty. Bit of a nightmare with that. The toilet and the sink didn't fit because of the damn soil pipe. Just the way it worked and the spacing we needed off the wall was just not going to work without boxing out behind the sink, which would have looked nice. And effectively in the end we just kept what was there and cleaned it up, and it actually cleaned up really nicely. So the toilet and sink I have still accounted for because I paid for them. I got the toilet off Facebook Marketplace for, oh, I should say, for the toilet and sink I budgeted £200, and I got the toilet off Facebook Marketplace for 65 quid, sorry, no, 60 quid, and that was, they'd bought that. Funnily enough, it didn't fit their bathroom either. That should have been a warning sign, shouldn't it? But they are happy that was 200, so I did get a good saving on it, and in fact my parents are just going to use it in our downstairs loo here. And the sink I spent £50 on, so that was £110 saving on that. Taps I budgeted for £50 because I replaced all the taps on the sink and the bath, and that came at £46.97, so I saved like £3 on that. Bath panels I budgeted 55 quid because I'd chosen the ones I wanted. I then managed to find some a bit cheaper, and that came in at 45, so there's a tenner saving there. And then the radiator I budgeted 65 quid for, and that was for a slightly bigger one that actually turns out wouldn't have really fit the space, mainly because we'd have had to take up all the floor to move the pipes, and it just didn't seem worth it. So I replaced it like for like with the exact same radiator, and that was £55, so again a £10 saving there. So the bathroom, you know, probably saved about 120 quid on what I was expecting to spend. So that comes in with all of that. And then comes the completely unbudgeted costs. So the first unbudgeted cost, which was pretty minimal cost, was to get the gutters cleaned out. The gutters were overflowing and it was only adding to the damp issues in the property. So that was 60 quid that I hadn't budgeted for, but you know, not a substantial amount of money realistically in the scheme of the cost of the works. However, then came the news that I needed a new boiler, which I just had not budgeted for, and it was a risk because when I got the property the boiler wasn't on, and there was also no gas supply to the property at the time, so I couldn't check if the boiler worked. That was a whole nightmare in itself. And when eventually we got the gas reconnected, the boiler, it did work, but it dropped pressure within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes of it going off, it dropped pressure. And it was a really old boiler, it was a really cheap brand of boiler, and the plumber was honest with me and said, I can repair it for you for 500 quid, but I'm going to be honest and say that it will probably break on you again within 6 months, and you'll be spending another 500 quid on it, and it's just not worth that. So I ended up spending £2,060. Now that wasn't just for the boiler, in fairness. That was also for so let's start again. It wasn't just for the boiler, it was for the new boiler, which was he ended up charging me £1,600 for the boiler. It was then £200 to rip out and replace the gas hob, about 30 quid to cap off the gas to the fireplace in the front room because I didn't want to have to service that every year. It's not necessary. I was putting a new boiler in it, they didn't need to be using a gas fire. Also to remove a monolithic ancient 70s boiler that the previous owners had left cowboys when they put in the combi boiler that had broken, so he had to remove 2 boilers, and that one was rusted to the floor. It was a floor standing one. And there was also the cost associated with replacing a radiator that burst. It was an old 70s, 80s one that just had finally given up the ghost. So yeah, £2,060, and boy oh boy was that a blow. Then to add on to that, I ended up spending £557 on an electrician. So my dad, he's not a qualified electrician, but he is capable, and he replaced all the light fittings and switches and sockets, and he did a really good job. And I know he did because as a landlord, you have to get an electrical safety certificate to be able to rent a house out, and they all passed with flying colours, all fine. However, when the electrician tested the consumer unit, one of the RCDs was faulty and that had to be replaced, and that was a cost. He also had to tidy up some cabling that was running close to the sink in the kitchen that the previous owners had put in. It was basically providing a socket for the washing machine and some cabling in the boiler cupboard just so that it was all safe. And also there was one light fixture that didn't have an earth running to it, and my dad had noticed that, but my dad, like I say, is not a qualified electrician and he couldn't run an earth to it himself, because you had to get the cable through the hole of the ceiling void and back to the nearest thing. I'm not sure, I'm not an electrician, I don't know how it works, but we knew that would need doing, but I actually think that was a lot of the cost because it was quite labour intensive to get the earth to the light fixture. So yeah, in total, I ended up spending £557 on the electrician, and this is where it shows that labour costs again, because of that £557, 320 of it was labour and the rest was parts. So, you know, that is hundreds of pounds. Labour does cost money. So I would say if you're embarking on a project and you're going to be getting tradesmen to do the lion's share of the work, just be prepared for that, because obviously they're worth the money, it's their job, it's their income, but it is expensive. So if I hadn't have incurred the costs of the boiler and the extra electrical works, I would have come in at £3,732.42, which would have been under budget by £1,267.58, and that would have been an amazing saving. However, we know now that wasn't the case, and in the end, because of the extra costs, I spent £6,349.58 and was over budget by £1,349.58. So £6,350 was my total spend on the house. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously I would have rather it came in under budget. However, the costs that I incurred were necessary to make the house safe and habitable. It needed a new boiler, it needed the electrics to be correct, the damp proofing works needed to be done. So I am happy with that, in terms of I know that that house should not need any major work in the near future at all, because I'm pretty damn sure now I've covered all bases. And that means as well that I have a huge level of comfort having tenants in there as well, knowing that they're in a safe environment. Now, obviously, you take out the safety precautions anyway by doing the gas safety certificate and the electrical safety certificate, as is statutory with the government, and rightfully so. And I can sleep at night knowing that that house is not going to burn down or blow up. And that is worth more than the extra £2,000 that I have ended up spending on it, because obviously if something had gone wrong and it was my fault, it would cost me a lot more than that. And I've done everything properly. All the work that's been done in the house has been done to the highest possible standard that I could achieve. None of it was cowboy work as the previous owners had done to the place, and we rectified so many of the problems that they had caused, which is really frustrating, because a lot of these problems could have been circumvented by proper maintenance of the house and just doing work properly in the first instance. However, can't change anything, it's done now, and the whole experience has been a learning curve. So I hope you found this video interesting, and if you are a first time buyer, I wish you all the luck, and I hope that you don't come across the issues that I did, and that it's plain sailing for you. Although I will say, you're definitely capable of it. I managed it. It was easier to cope with than I realised. Obviously taking a financial hit wasn't, but thankfully it was all worked out in the end, and it's all fine. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. Hope you found it interesting. Stick around and I'll be back again with you guys soon with another video.